Hello, and welcome to Executive Edge, where insights meet action. Brought to you by Hartman's team of Executive Advisors. This video series delivers thoughtful takes and expert analysis on the top trends shaping technology, business, and industry. Designed to fit into your busy schedule, each episode runs 20 minutes or less, breaking down the innovations, risks, and opportunities that matter most. No fluff, just the insights you need to stay informed and ahead of the curve. Let's
Welcome
dive
to
in.
Executive Edge, the Hartman Executive Advisors series where we explore the leadership and technology solutions shaping organizations today. I'm Andres Ray, Vice President of Relationship Management here at Hartman, and today we're talking about the realities that higher education institutions are facing right now, and joined by Marie Hartman, Executive Vice President, Co-founder, and Managing Director at Hartman, who works closely with colleges and universities during periods of risk, transition, and modernization. Marie, you're working with colleges and universities during some of the most challenging times. So let's get into what leaders should be thinking about right now. Now,
Awesome.
what are the biggest disruptives you're seeing hitting higher education, Marie?
Well, first off, Andres, thank you for bringing me onto the show. I'll be honest, this is like one of my first times doing this on video, and I find that this will be very interesting. So I'm very passionate about this topic. So one of the things I think that is most interesting and that strikes me about higher education and leadership today is that there's obviously the traditional disruptors and there's new ones. And really what's different is that they are happening all at the same time with a lot of speed and velocity. And I think that's really what's different. And what do I mean by that? Number one, of course, universities and colleges are facing financial pressures and operational pressures. That's no different. Coupled with some new ones related to cybersecurity and AI. Those are not simply IT problems. Those are now at the enterprise risk level. And that's a nuance that's incredibly important. Couple that with the challenges, enrollment challenges, whether it's the traditional demographic student population changing, but now because of some of the policy and administrative challenges that we're seeing at the government level, it is absolutely affecting a major revenue stream of international students. And that is absolutely, again, causing another major disruptor. And one of the things, Andres, that I just wanted to call out, and I'm sure that my colleagues in higher ed appreciate this, and that is that we business leaders really need to be honest and know that we are entering a time of change, and change is constant and it needs to be transformational across the enterprise. But what's happening in higher ed is that the culture of decision making is traditionally committee driven. And what does that mean? Of course, we want to be inclusive, so all voices are heard. But with the rapid amount of change happening to us, we have to really have the decision-making ability to be clear and unified and move quickly. And that is really challenged by that traditional committee-driven mindset around decision-making, which is a hallmark of higher ed universities and colleges. So that's what I'm seeing today.
That's really interesting. Would you say that technological debt is something else that universities are facing as well?
Yes, absolutely. So modern day businesses are modern because we as consumers have modern expectations of the way we want to experience things. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we see, not just in higher ed, but across the 7 industries that we're in, is that oftentimes business leaders see technology as the tech people's problems. And really, technology, like money, underpins everything that we do and the strategies that we're employing. So it really has to be the business who owns this portfolio of how we want to approach aligning technology portfolio of initiatives with our business strategies. And so tech debt is one of those things. And how we address technology debt really has to be in alignment with the business goals and priorities that we have, because it's just too much to consume and the impact is not there if it's not really defined by the outcomes that we want and re-engineering it backwards.
That makes complete sense, Marie. And it sounds like there's like three buckets here, really, is about the financial challenges and the macro environment impacting university, kind of that tech debt issue, and then also kind of the culture and organizational challenges they face. Where do you think institutions struggle initially in kind of identifying this change or getting started? How do they get started?
Oh my gosh, that's an excellent question, Andres. I love how you're hitting a core issue. When I walk into a higher ed institution, one of the first things that I'm trying to understand is, do we have a unified understanding of what problem we're trying to solve? Or what opportunity are we trying to go after? Is there a unified understanding of that? And I often find there is not a unified understanding of that, or even one version of what problem are we trying to solve. And the fact that there's a lack of that unified definition of the problem really stems back to that cultural issue of governance. So because there's lots of committees around decision making, of course, they see things differently and they have different priorities and expectations. And one of the things that I think is interesting about struggles is that there's an opportunity to really create strong change management. So it's really not technology for the sake of technology. It's, again, managing, it's communicating, it's about unifying where we're trying to go and managing that communication and change management so we can all be on the same page around directionally what success looks like and all the things that we all have to do together in order to get there. When we are engaged with clients, they often underestimate the technology modernization efforts that they have to undergo. And leaders will often see an ERP implementation or upgrade or a data upgrade as that's IT, where that is, because it touches so many areas of the enterprise, it really is about enterprise transformation and not about an ERP upgrade or a data upgrade. We're really talking about enterprise transformation. And we leaders love data. Data helps us understand directionally where we want to go. And oftentimes, because we don't have governance around our data, and it really does lead to minimizing the impact that we have on our enrollment strategies, on financial forecasting, as well as what student success and outcomes really are. What are the trends? So that's why business leaders really have to own that enterprise transformation. And the CFO, the chief strategy officer, and the CIO, and the president all really need to be working together because it is an enterprise opportunity around transformation.
Marie, that's so interesting. Because I would say maybe a lot of people don't think of universities as enterprises, right? But they are an enterprise delivering higher education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And institutions, to your point, because they're an enterprise, and nobody wants to change for the sake of change, right? Having that unified vision really around the enterprise really is a critical success factor for really seeing impact from that transformational change that we all want.
Absolutely, Marie. So Marie, you really set the stage here that, addressing IT challenges and opportunities is an enterprise level endeavor, right, for universities, higher ed.
Yeah.
What sort of projects are they really tackling?
Good question. So when I'm thinking of big initiatives that we are often seeing, and I'm thinking of enrollment, international enrollment strategies, that's enterprise-wide. That affects the entire university and college. Cost restructuring, M&A activity to create scale or even competitive distinction, another big initiative. Cyber posture, or how do we leverage AI? Those are all big initiatives that undercut the entire enterprise. Those are the examples that I'm thinking about.
And things you're mentioning there, Marie, they likely have different owners, right, within universities. So there's different leaders in charge of international enrollment, for example. There's different leaders in charge of, let's say, enterprise resource system. Where do you think a fractional IT leadership, service would help kind of stabilize, modern, and make progress within kind of what is really a committee-driven, enterprise-sized institution like a university?
I think fractional leadership is a concept that is still new to many and is also probably needs to better be understood. But just to begin with and set the stage, that fractional leadership is not a shortcut. It's really about considering the fact that with all these challenges, leaders within higher ed, number one, their capacity to do all of this is challenged. Number two, their experiential leadership around certain situations is obviously, it's important to have that situational experience. And that's where fractional leadership really can not be seen as a shortcut, but really as a way to bring in that strategic capability and leadership at a pace and at a time when you need to address the pace of change. So that's why I think strategic fractional IT leadership is an example. It helps institutions to stabilize, modernize, and make progress where they may lack that capacity or experience to be able to do so. That's what I mean by that, Andres.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I'm sure having that fractional strategic leader also brings an independent voice, right?
Absolutely. Well, and it's important that that fractional leadership, to your point, has only the outcomes of their clients in mind, right? And is not motivated by, the sale of stuff, especially when it comes to technology, right? There's, of course, lots of great technologies out there, but it's really not about the technology. It's really about what outcomes are we driving towards and how do we have the experiential leadership to know how to put all these pieces together to be able to drive a movement and build capacity into that C-suite. Oftentimes, fractional leadership provides that strategic capacity. They're not just hands. It really helps to ask the right questions, create the right critical conversations that need to be happening within the C-suite so that we can make decisions around a unified direction. Fractional leadership also brings cross-sector patterns that they can recognize because they do this all the time, right? And one of the things that I'm proud of here at Hartman is that we've been doing this for over 21 years across 7 industries. So we bring that leadership experience, and that's what business leaders want. Not only experience, but the ability to help them ask questions and create movement forward and not just be paralyzed by all the change that's happening to us. They really want that forward movement. And I think the other thing that fractional leadership brings, especially fractional IT leadership, is because these enterprise modernization efforts are across the entity, they bring the ability to build governance and accountability structures that may not exist today. And that is a huge benefit that drives things forward and also is a new capability or habit that traditional committee-driven decision-making structures could benefit from.
Yeah, completely agree. And what conversations, what strategic conversations should higher leaders be having right now, but often or not?
That's really, that's a profound question, Andres, and I'm not sure we always appreciate the answer. And that is that, it's human to sometimes want to avoid critical conversations, right? It's very human. So I just want to put that up front. And, we at Hartman, are no different than anyone else. So, but these conversations signal institutional maturity. And when they're not happening, it's a red flag to us. And so some of the strategic conversations that should be happening are, do we have an appropriately diversified enrollment strategy? What we have seen from the data from an Akubo conference that I attended this past fall is that oftentimes universities and colleges are over-reliant on 1 or 2 countries like China and India. So how are we minimizing that international enrollment risks by diversifying who we are trying to attract. Did you know that the United States is the #1 destination for foreign students? England or the Oxford universities are a distant second. We attract 10 times more students than the second place country. That's pretty fascinating, right, in and of itself. But when you think about the world is made of lots of countries who would love to send their students here. How are we strategizing and diversifying our international enrollment strategies? That's a great conversation that needs to be had. Do we have a technology foundation that is aligned to our strategic plan and is executable? You know, when we think about university, are they ready for ERP change and transformation? Do they have maturity around their data before they undergo some of these massive, undertakings? And quite frankly, how are they considering cyber and AI in a way that drives outcomes rather than just see them as initiatives?
So Marie, you really set the stage here of sort of all these issues universities are facing, from kind of a financial macro environment to a technological debt, cybersecurity posture, to organizational challenges for these hard conversations. But let's set the stage for the next 12 months. What do you think leaders should be looking out for?
Wow, that's really, gosh, that's a big question, Andres. I've got a loaded answer, so let me break it down into 5 buckets. I think that over the next 12 months, it's really important that leaders in higher ed bring a clear data-driven view around their institutional health. That's a huge bucket. And things like, do we understand our program margins? Do we have a diversified enrollment strategy? Do we understand our technology gaps and how we're going to deal with them in a way that maximizes outcomes and impact? And are we thinking about cyber and AI from an enterprise level and creating programs to address it from an enterprise level? And finally, do we understand our financial stress indicators enough so that we can make meaningful ways to proactively address them, not in a reactionary fashion, but in a really planned fashion? That would be one big bucket. Another bucket would be, how are we prioritizing our modernization efforts? Are we looking at modernization not as an IT thing, but really understanding what's our business strategy, what are our business goals, and how are we re-engineering backwards the things that we need to do to align technology to enable our business strategy? So how are we considering that from an ERP stabilization or strategy? Do we have data governance before we go into any of these initiatives? Because it is about, understanding what we need to see, what we need to measure, how are we accessing it in order to set up the enterprise view of it, right? And are we architecting it in that way? And how are we using data or modernization to address our enrollment strategies or cyber or AI strategies? So that's would be in that second bucket. The third bucket would be, again, addressing that culture of decision-making in higher ed. Are we creating strong governance structures so that we can create cross-campus alignment and move forward in a, again, proactive way rather than in a distracted or reactive way? And the fourth thing is be bold. Bring in fractional leadership so that you can close some of these experiential gaps and have a partner to create better decision-making to move things forward. And let's not forget that number 5 bucket, and that is that we really need to have multiple enrollment scenarios, not just a single forecast, and really, especially around our international enrollment strategies. I always like to say you are a leader because people like your optimism, your positive vision, your attitude to go forward. But at the end of the day, Andres, we got to remember that resilience not only comes from optimism, but it has to come from clarity, alignment, and really good execution. So I really wish everyone lots of wonderful luck. It's 2026. Let's go and let's get after these things.
So Marie, thank you for sharing your perspective and insights. For higher ed leaders, the message is clear. There's many challenges on different fronts, ranging from the financial side to technological debt, cyber positioning, to organizational challenges that, include ownership, right, of this change. What you just said, it's not about optimism. Optimism isn't a plan. And, fractional leadership is giving an institutions ways to stabilize its operations, modernize thoughtfully, and move forward with clarity during periods of uncertainty. And so to learn more about Hartman Executive Advisors and how we support colleges and universities, please check us out online at hartmanadvisors.com and subscribe to Executive Edge for more conversations like these. Thank you again for watching.
Thanks, Andres.